Hey ladies and gentlemen, Stephen here from Redolessence. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my channel today. I really do appreciate it. So today, let's go ahead and talk about a brand new fragrance released this year in 2021, unless you're watching this video in 2022 or later. But this one is a modern reinterpreted version of a classic, and of course by Ralph Lauren. This is called Polo Cologne Intense, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin my fragrance review of Polo Cologne Intense by Ralph Lauren, this brand new fragrance released this year in 2020, I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, if you like fragrance reviews here on YouTube, but also top 10s, giveaways, unboxings, and more, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. All you have to do is click on that red button in the corner. And of course, while you're at it, please be sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. So again, this fragrance just came out. I actually purchased my bottle from Macy's. I know the original was composed by Carlos Benaim, and that one came out in the late 70s, although it was worn pretty much like all throughout the 80s. And when I smell it, I remember that fir balsam, the oak moss, that mossy verdant green, 80s powerhouse type of an aroma that a lot of people in my life used to wear, including my grandfather, who has now passed on. But this is the fragrance that definitely brings me back to that time period. And there are a lot of positive memories associated with it, but it's also the type of DNA that a lot of people, I wouldn't call it such, but a lot of people call it dated or old school. And I think that that gives way to the fact that a lot of people don't necessarily feel confident wearing these green fir, pine, oak moss, and sometimes even vetiver types of fragrances. However, like I said, this is a modern reinterpreted version of the original. And so this one has mint, it has basil, it has ambroxan in the base. What says modern more than ambroxan, right? But it also has vetiver, it has some earthy notes in there as well. There's thyme, some aromatic ingredients in the heart. There's also a little bit of violet in here as well. And funny enough, that violet note kind of reminded me of another fragrance, which I'll mention in the smell segment. But is this one the new gold? Is green the new gold? Is this one worth checking out? Especially if maybe you weren't that crazy about the original Polo. Is this one fragrance that I think you would enjoy, or one that I would recommend that you check out? I'm going to be letting you know exactly what I feel in terms of all of that. Let's start with the presentation. So this fragrance does indeed open up fresh. It opens up very fresh. You're gonna have the mint, you're gonna have the basil in here. You have a lot of these aromatic ingredients that give it a little bit of an herbal appeal. And I kind of like that. You know, I'm from the Mediterranean. I am like 70% Greek, 20% Italian, and the rest is like broadly North African. But I really love this one. And so this is that type of fragrance where it's different. There's a quirky element about it. It's a little aromatic. There's just enough basil in here to complement the mint, but not enough to make it smell like a spice kitchen or something like that, or to give it a truly culinary feel, because at the end of the day, we want it to be functional and we want it to smell like a fragrance that we would put on our skin and people will compliment us for the aroma and whatever. But that element of freshness, I think, is entangled with that ambroxan that allows the mint to climb into the descent of the note pyramid, and thus giving it a freshness even at the 5th, 6th, 7th hour of the performance of this fragrance on your skin. So it's a complex fragrance, and I'm definitely getting a lot of that mint, the mint and the violet. And so in the opening, you get that bright minty green introduction. And I think that bright green vetiver mint thing kind of reminds me a little bit of Mugler Cologne, but not really. It's not as fresh as Mugler Cologne. There still is that green underpinning in here that I think is going to remind a lot of people of the original. And I'm guessing this one came out because there are a lot of guidelines regarding the use of fir balsam. And so there are a lot of restrictions that have been made as of late. And so I would imagine that in an effort to create something modern and contemporary, but also sort of bypass those newly imposed restrictions, this is the final product. But I think it's good. I think it's a really good product. So the violet in here kind of reminds me a little bit of the violet from Dior Fahrenheit, but not as much of a mechanic, leathery type of a violet, if you know what I mean. It doesn't smell like asphalt, like some people say. I don't get that vibe from it. However, I do get that rough and tumble sort of masculine vibe from it, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with that intense designation. And so I kind of like that appeal to the fragrance. And then in the base, you do have a little bit of the vetiver, but surprisingly, it's a clean vetiver. I thought it was going to be very earthy and rooty. It's not. I think it's really the other green elements of the fragrance that give it that earthy and masculine and slightly aggressive texture. But at the end of the day, this is a smooth fragrance. And again, I do think that the citrus in the opening, I think I remember reading grapefruit in the note breakdown, but I think the citrus in the opening, the basil, the clean vetiver, and the ambroxan in the base definitely contribute to that masculine aura. So here's what I'm going to say. I can see this one being very popular despite the fact that it's a flanker of Polo, because it has some earthy elements that are highly welcomed in other fragrances. Let's take this one, for example, Creta Ventus. Creta Ventus has an earthy backbone, and it also has, or at least some of the earlier formulations, have a lot of birch in them. Now, birch gives off a very smoky smell, and that's something that could be a little bit too heavy-handed, but I think the freshness in here complements those darker, earthier elements so well that I think that's going to increase the versatility, but also the modernity of the fragrance. And I think that that's very important. And so if you're going to a Macy's, which is where I purchased this one, and you're thinking, let me not smell that one because it's gonna smell like Polo, I think the similarity to Polo is only about 60 to 65%. Inevitably, you will smell some Polo in here, but this is a brighter, fresher, reinvented and reimagined version of Polo. I'm not saying that they reinvented the wheel. I just think that they're taking the car and they're just traveling in a slightly different direction, maybe going straight to the destination as opposed to taking the scenic route or something like that. I think it's an awesome fragrance. I'm personally really enjoying it. I bought the small bottle because God knows I have way too many fragrances in my collection. Now I'm kind of thinking maybe I should have purchased the bigger bottle, but doesn't matter. If I wear it all, I'm just gonna repurchase, no big deal. And I do have other fragrances within this style that I can wear as an alternative. But in any case, thumbs up from me. All right, 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up from me. I'm really enjoying this fragrance. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, of course, we kind of have to take that criteria with a grain of salt, because this is a flanker. And so we're not expecting it to smell completely different. And even if it did smell completely different, I don't know if that would necessarily be a good thing, just because the company is then trying to take money from you while still using the Polo name. That's not the case here. There is an allusion to the original, but it does things differently enough to warrant a purchase. And it also has this bright, fresh, minty, citrusy, ambroxan, oceanic feel that I think amps up the modernity of the fragrance. So that's a good thing. In terms of the longevity, I got about 7 hours on my skin. For a fragrance with a cologne intense designation, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are going to expect 10, 11, 12 hours. I got about 7 to 8 hours in. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you are sampling this one. It's not going to be like a beast mode powerhouse type of a fragrance. But I think the longevity is right where it needs to be. Projection was great for the first hour of application. You're definitely going to get noticed. And I think at some points it actually even radiated beyond an arm's length, because at one point I was sitting on the couch and my wife was sitting right here at the kitchen table. And she goes, "What did you just spray?" And I only did like 2 sprays on a test strip just to evaluate it. And so you are going to get noticed from a distance. However, I know that that happens to a lot of fragrances. And of course, if there's adequate ventilation in the room, it's going to carry the aroma. I totally get that. But this one does last a long time on my skin and it performs rather well. Versatility is really good. I can see myself wearing this one in any season, any occasion. I think it has that refined, classic, gentlemanly, masculine quality that would make me feel comfortable wearing this one in a formal scenario. But I think the price is right where it needs to be, and there's enough of that freshness in here that you can wear it casually. And so I think it's an incredibly versatile fragrance. In terms of the presentation, I quite like the presentation, very similar to the original, of course, which I do own. And my final verdict on this one is, if you are kind of bored of the new designer fragrances that lean too much in the direction of bright, fresh, citrusy, aquatic, you want something that's different, you have a level of respect for the classics, and you want a classic that's been reinterpreted and reimagined and made a little bit fresher, and it's not exactly the same, right? It's gonna be maybe 60% similar, 65% similar. I think you're really going to enjoy Polo Cologne Intense. I'm personally a fan of it. I'm very happy that I purchased it, and I'm certainly gonna be putting it to really good use. So there you have it, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch this review, and I'm hoping you learned something from this review. If you did, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. All you have to do is click on the red button in the corner. And again, while you're at it, make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.